Hi, and welcome to the new Proxmox and PowerShell series. So this one is kind of going to build on our Proxmox series that we just finished. But this one is going to really focus on the PowerShell side of things where we're going to actually be building our own Proxmox module. Now, I know that there are already modules out there that exist for Proxmox, but I strongly believe that making your own modules using the API routes will really help you solidify your PowerShell learning. So if you're starting to learn PowerShell, this is actually a great project that you can do. It looks especially good on your GitHub, especially if you are trying to become a system administrator, or also really good if you're just starting to use Proxmox. Really, you want to learn a little bit more about the features. You're going from VMware to Proxmox at work. You've got a home lab you're trying to build out and you're trying to automate. These are all scenarios where this project will be extremely handy for you, and I think that it would be a useful addition to a portfolio. So we're going to be building the module from scratch. We have built some scripts in our previous series, but they were just using the API route. They weren't repeatable. We didn't make them into functions. So we're going to be making them into functions today. We're probably going to do about 2 functions per video because I don't want to overload the videos and I want to give the opportunity to you guys to basically get this nice template. We're going to be able to connect into the API today, and we're going to build our first actual function that's going to retrieve the nodes that are available in our Proxmox environment. And then next week, we're going to be doing the storage and actually downloading the ISO. So I'm already giving you guys a little bit of a tip on what we're going to be doing in the next video. If you guys want to try and do that, if you guys struggle, at least when the video comes out, you guys will be able to see a nice walkthrough on how to do that, because I do believe on getting out of tutorial hell is really important. That's kind of how I like to lay out my videos, is give you guys a opportunity to actually do the things before we actually go ahead and do it. But I give you a little starting point to actually start that. So without actually talking anymore, let's actually go ahead and let's get started. So we know the first thing that we need in order to really get connected to our Proxmox, of course, is we need to authenticate, and we're going to do it through API tokens. So our whole module is really going to rely on our token here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go over the steps on how we can actually create a token in Proxmox first. We're going to copy all those credentials and we're going to create another CLI.xml file, which is going to hold that. At least it's going to be a little bit more protected than just pasting in that secret into plain text into our PowerShell scripts. It's going to at least be somewhat encrypted with our CLI.xml. So let's just create a file here. We're going to call this Proxmox module, and we are just going to put it a dot. We're going to make it as a .ps1 for now. We're going to convert it to a .psm1 once we're actually complete. I like to just start it off with a PS1 just to let me know that it is a working document basically. And we are going to actually go ahead and we're going to go into our web browser here. And what we're going to do is we're going to generate our API token. So I'm already logged in here. So you're going to want to go to your Proxmox environment on port 8006 or whatever port you actually put in. And we're going to scroll down here. We're going to go to API tokens. Now I already have one, but we're going to create one from scratch here. So we're going to click add, and we're going to pick our root at PAM user. Our token ID, in my case, is going to be module. This way I know what we used it for. You can add a comment, you can set it to expire, and we're going to want to uncheck the privilege separation because I want this to have the exact same accesses as root. Of course, in a production environment, you're really going to want to separate that privilege separation and give the exact permissions that you need. What's really nice is that the Proxmox API documentation tells you exactly what permissions you need to run the different routes. So that would be awesome. Maybe you would have a specific API for just creating VMs, a specific API for monitoring the VMs. This way you only need the accesses that you need. If you guys want a video on that, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I can definitely do one of those. So we're going to click on add here. And this is what we're going to need. So this is what our function is really going to rely on. It's going to rely on a token ID and a secret ID. So let's go ahead, let's copy the secret value here. We're just going to paste that in here for now. And we're going to take the token ID and we are also going to paste that in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create our CLI.XML. That is the first step that I always like to do. We're not going to be saving this into our script. It's going to be encrypted in that CLI.XML file. So let's go ahead and let's do a variable here. We're just going to call it creds for now. We're going to do a get credential here. And then all we're going to do is do a creds, and we're going to pipe that to an export CLI.XML. And we're going to put the path here. And we are just going to right click and we're going to copy this path here. We're going to paste that in. And we are going to put in our module API token. Let's actually just module API dash token dot XML. That should be good. And let's go ahead and let's just put in the username. Let's pre-fill out the username here. So the username, I usually like to put in the token ID in there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this secret here. We're going to copy it. We're going to run this command. We're going to paste that password in there. And we are going to then export our CLI.XML. So there we have our CLI.XML file there. And let's just make sure that our CLI.XML does actually work. So we are going to create a variable here. We're just going to create that as API token data here. We're going to make that equal, and we're going to make that equal to the import CLI.XML. And we are just going to erase this line, and we are just going to run this real quick. And what's handy about the CLI.XML is we can actually get that data and view it on our screen. So we're just going to quickly look at what is inside of that variable. We can see our token ID is there. It's the root at PAM !module, which is perfect. And then if we do a get credential, close that parenthesis password here, we will see that our secret also indeed does match. So let's just remove that secret here. And let's go ahead and we can remove this as well. So we already have our API token data, which we're going to need in order to really test our function. So let's go ahead and let's actually create our first function without further ado here. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to write the word function. We're going to make that, we're going to name it connect Proxmox API token, open and close curly brackets. Now the first thing we're going to want to do is put in that commandlet binding in square brackets with a parentheses here. So we're making it a commandlet and we're binding it to that. And we're going to give a param here. And we're going to go ahead and do an open and close parentheses. Now in here, we're going to actually put in all the different parameters that we're going to need. So we know that in order to connect to our Proxmox with the API token, we need the token ID, we need the secret. There's one other thing that we need, and that is going to be the Proxmox server. Whether that be the name of the server or the IP address, we're going to need where is our Proxmox server. So that's actually going to be my first variable here. So we're going to do a set of square brackets. We're going to do parameter, and we're going to open and close parentheses, and we're going to put mandatory equals true. And this is because we need to supply a server. Without a server, we don't know where to connect. We want that user to put that in. And we're going to make sure that they give us in format of a string here. And we're going to name that parameter Proxmox server. And then we're going to put a comma so we can put in more parameters. Now what's going to be nice is if it does not match a string, it will automatically throw an error message, which is going to be nice. We're going to have some error handling in our function as well, but this just kind of helps validate what kind of information we're going to be taking in. Now, all I'm actually going to do is I'm going to copy paste this because there's no point really rewriting it. We know that our second parameter is that token ID, which we need it. It's going to be mandatory and it's going to be a string. So we're going to put token ID here. And all we're going to do is we're going to paste it again, and we're just going to remove the comma from the last one because it's going to be our last parameter that we need. And we're going to name this one secret, which is going to be for the secret that we pass in. All right, and once we actually get that all of those parameters in, let's go ahead and let's start writing our function here. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is create our headers variable. So we're going to do headers here, and we're going to make that equal to an empty hash table or an empty object. So we're going to do a @ sign and an open and close curly brackets. And then in here, we're going to put headers dot authorization. So this is going to be a key value pair. So that's where you're getting into that hash table. And we're going to make that equal. We're going to make that equal to a string. And our string is going to be PVE API token space token ID variable. So that's going to be our $ token ID equals secret. So here we are actually creating our API token that we need in order to connect to that Proxmox server. We're not going to rely on the user to format that headers. We are going to format it for them. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to create a base URI here. And we're going to make that equal to https:// we're going to do a variable wrapper here, and we're going to put the Proxmox server : 8006. Now, what we could have even done in this case, we could add a parameter for port, but in my situation, we're going to leave it at 8006, and we're going to do a /API2/JSON here. And then what we're going to want to do as well is we're going to want a URI variable, and we're going to want to create that as the base URI /version. So this is actually going to be used to validate our connection. Is what we're actually going to do is we're going to try to get the version back from the API route. If we can get the version back, we know that the token is good and the Proxmox server IP or the actual URI is valid. So it's going to be awesome. All right, so the first thing that we're going to want to do that is we're going to wrap this all in a try catch statement. So we're going to do a try set of curly brackets and then a catch and a set of curly brackets. And in the try statement here, we're going to do a response variable is going to be equal to invoke dash rest method. Our URI is going to be our URI variable. Our headers parameter is going to be our headers variable. Our content, that is content type. We're going to put that as application/JSON. So once again, we're just simplifying this for the user of the module. They won't have to do all of this. All they have to do is supply us the token ID, the secret, and the location of the Proxmox server. We're going to handle the full connection. And then the content type is application JSON. The method we're going to want to use is going to be the get method. And what we're going to want to do is do the skip certificate check. Now the skip certificate check, maybe that's something you can put in the parameters as well. I know for my module, I am always going to want to do the skip certificate check, but maybe if this is a module that you're building out for an environment that does have a certificate, maybe give the option to just make that a parameter. There are a lot of things that you can do differently from what I'm doing to make it completely your own, and I'll let you guys know when there is a situation for that. All right, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a return here. So once we have our response, we're going to go ahead and return something. So once we actually have that, we're going to return. And what we're going to return is we're going to actually return a hash table or an object, depending on which way you want to look at it. For me, it's going to be mostly a hash table because it is really key value pairs in this case. There are no real methods, but we are going to be returning a object at the end of the day. And our object here is going to be a base URI is going to be equal to base URI. And I'm going to show you guys what the important for this return. We could just return the response and it would return the version, but what we actually are returning here is we are returning that connection. So we're going to be returning the base URI, we're going to be returning the headers, which we know are valid, and the Proxmox server that you passed in. So we're going to do headers here is equal to headers, and then our Proxmox server is going to be equal to Proxmox server here. And then in our catch statement, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to return, and we're going to return a string. Now, in here in the catch, you could also do another throw, which you're going to throw an error to the user. I like to do it as a return for now. I like to just kind of make sure that it's working. It's going to give me a nice little output. But again, you're writing your own module. So if you're writing this for yourself or for your work, maybe these would definitely change. You can throw an error, you can return an object with a response code, the error, and maybe how to fix it. There are a lot of different options. In my case, I'm going to put error in trying to get information from Proxmox server, and I'm going to actually put a variable wrapper here, and I'm going to put the Proxmox server that the user supplied, and then I'm going to go ahead and put a set of colon here, and I'm going to put error, and I'm going to put error colon, and I'll put the exact error message that we get back. So we're going to do the $_ to get the error that was passed in, .exception, .message. And what this is going to do, this is going to pass in the exact error message that we got back from the invoke REST method. So as you can see, we have this function completely completed here. We have our API token data. Let's go ahead and let's actually test it out here. So if we do a connect dash Proxmox API token, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do Proxmox server. Now my Proxmox server IP address is, we can actually get that from here. I'm just going to copy this. We're going to paste that in. Now, of course, you can actually put this as a variable. And let's actually go ahead and do that, because that could be pretty annoying eventually. So let's do a Proxmox server variable. We're going to make that equal to our IP address. And let's put that IP address in here. And our token ID, now we know our token ID is our username of our API token data. So API token data username. And then our secret is going to be our API token data dot get network credential, open and close parentheses, password. All right, so if we actually run this here, if we actually run all of our code here, this is what we get back from our connect Proxmox API token. We get back headers, which actually nicely formulates our header for us. We get our Proxmox server, and we get our base URI here. So what we can actually do is we could make this equal to connection details equals the connect dash Proxmox. And if we actually run this all again now, and we go looking at what is inside the connection details, we can actually see that it is our object that we wanted. All right, so let's create our second or our first actual function, which is going to be to get the different nodes here, which is going to be basically this right here, which for me is called Promox, but maybe you have it running in a cluster where you would have a lot of different nodes. So again, we're just preparing for maybe a multitude of different environments that we're making it for. All right, so we're going to do a function here, and we're going to make it a get Proxmox node. And then we're going to do our open and close curly brackets. Once again, we're going to do our commandlet binding here. We're going to do a param, open and close again. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do our first parameter. And we're going to make it mandatory equals true because we need this parameter. And what we're actually going to be expecting here is going to be an object. Oops. And that object that we want is going to be our connection. And then we're going to do a comma here. And then in here, we're actually going to put in another parameter. But this time, we are not going to put in the mandatory equals true. So this one is just a parameter. You can put it in if you want or not. And we're going to make it a type string. And we're going to put node name. So this is going to make it to where we can get all the nodes in our Proxmox environment, or let's get the specific node that we're looking for to see if it actually exists. So let's go ahead and let's actually hit enter here. And let's go ahead and let's do URI. And then this is where we're going to be using that connection here. So we're going to do an equal variable wrapper here first. And we're going to do connection dot base URI, and then we're going to do slash nodes here, and we're actually going to wrap that in a pair of double quotes here. I actually forgot that. So it's going to be our base URI, which is going to be this here, nodes. It just makes writing our API routes significantly easier by having this base URI. You by all means do not need this base URI. You don't need this Proxmox server. If you really didn't want to, I mean, you don't even really need the headers. If you want the user to be fully responsible of knowing how to create the header, knowing how to put in that information, just simply creating functions for the different API routes. But I find giving that extra little bit of usability with passing in a connection details really helps a lot. And then we're going to do another try catch statement here. And then in this one, in the try, we're going to do, once again, we're going to do a response variable. It's going to be equal to our invoke REST method. Our URI, once again, is just going to be our URI variable. Our headers is going to be, once again, our headers variable. Actually, it's going to be, sorry, it's going to be our connection dot headers. Our content type is going to be application slash JSON. And then our method is once again going to be a get. And we're going to do the skip certificate check once again. Now we're going to have to do a little check here because we have a non-mandatory parameter. So this is where I'm going to be actually showing you guys how you guys can actually even implement the skip certificate check parameter. Would be a very similar way. So here we're actually going to do a if node name. So if we've actually passed in a node name, open and close parentheses here. So if we've actually done that, let's go and let's do our response variable. And we're going to do equals our response variable because we already have our response dot data here. And we're going to pipe that to where node equals node name. And then all we're going to do is we're going to then select ID, status, and node. Now, we know all of these from our previous experience using these specific API routes when we were doing the Proxmox series. Now, typically what I would do is I would do something very similar to this and test it all out first before creating a module, which I'm sure we're going to be experiencing that in the later videos. But just in case you guys are new to the channel, this is where I'm actually being able to get all these different datas and where the node is equal to node name. But you can easily just run this API route, get the details, and then build onto it. But if that node is there, and then what we're going to do is if response, so if a response exists, we are then going to actually just return response, which we know is going to have the ID, status, and node. And now we're going to have a else here, open and close curly brackets. So this is going to be if this response is null, which means we had a response from the invoke rest method first, but then when we went and filtered it, we actually did not find anything with that node name. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a return no nodes, and then we're going to put our variable here, node name found in Proxmox server, and then do our variable wrapper here. And we're going to do connection dot Proxmox server. So here we're just telling the user, hey, we actually didn't find a node under that node name in our Proxmox server. So that is going to be our response. Now, if someone did not put in a node name, we're going to have a else statement in here. And what this is going to do, this is just going to be response equals response.data. And we're going to pipe that simply to select ID status node. And we're going to do a return response. Simply that. If you didn't specify a node name, here are all the nodes available in the Proxmox server. And now we are then going to do a catch here, which our catch can actually be pretty much identical to this. So we're going to copy this one. We're going to paste that in here. So it's going to be error trying to get information from Proxmox server. And all we're going to do is we're going to need to change the Proxmox server variable to the connection variable dot Proxmox server, and the error stays exactly the same. So let's actually go ahead and let's test all these functions out. Let's actually test them out for errors as well. So we actually have those two running. So what we can actually do is let's just copy paste this connection details real quick. And instead of passing in our API, our actual secret here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a random string here. We're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, which we know that that secret is incorrect. And let's go ahead and let's actually run this. So if we actually run this real quick. All right, and let's go check out the connection details. We're actually going to see error in trying to get information from Proxmox, and then we actually get that. Now, what we can actually do, because like it's not super ideal that we don't even know that an error really happened in this situation, is if we want to, if we actually change this to throw here, let's just rerun the function so it's in our memory, and we actually run this, we will actually see that now we get a nice error message, and we get exactly our message that we want, which is going to be error in trying to get information from Proxmox server. Response status code does not indicate success, 401 invalid token value. So that is actually perfect. And then if we run the second one now, which has the proper value, as you can see, it really quickly finishes. We look at the connection details, and it actually works, which is awesome. So we know that our error catching works. It actually does validate that the connection tokens that you passed in are actually accurate. Now what we can do is we can do a get Proxmox node here. Connection, let's pass in our connection details. And let's actually just do this. So this will actually get us all the nodes that are in our environment, which of course is just Promox. And the status is actually online, which is awesome. Now let's pass in a node name. Let's pass in our node name. Let's pass in test here. Now if we actually run this, once again, we get no nodes test found in Proxmox server. But if we actually change this to Promox, we will actually get, of course, doesn't really change it from when we get all the nodes because I only have one node in my environment, but we get the correct node back, which is awesome. So now if we actually do this and we get our variable node, we can actually get that correctly. But once again, if we do our test and we store that into node, we once again we don't really get an error message. We just get that node is actually going to be equal no nodes test found. So let's go ahead and let's go back into our function and let's just hit throw. And once again, let's just do that and let's run the entire thing. I don't believe I actually thought I ran it, but maybe not. Oh, and this is because it is this return here. My bad. Let's do the throw here. Completely missed the throw that I was actually doing. And let's go ahead and let's run this and we get that information. Now, the reason why we weren't getting this, even after I changed the first return to a throw, because I had changed this bottom return to a throw, but this is if our initial connection had failed, not if the node name that I gave was bad. So you do have to make sure that you are actually changing the right things, but we changed that to a throw, and now we actually get a nice little error message. And in the node, it still has our old value because we didn't nullify that. But if I go node equals null here, and then we go ahead and we run this, we will see that node is still not equal to anything because we got that error, which is awesome. And now if we do Promox here, and we do that, in our node variable, we will actually get our node that we are looking for. So like I said, in the next video, we're going to be getting the storage and we're going to be downloading our ISO because of course, those are the first things that we need before we can actually go ahead and create a VM. We need ISOs to be able to load into those VMs to have operating systems on them in order for them to be actually useful. So that is going to be on the next video. And then if you guys want to see anything specific, please let me know in the comment section down below as well. I will also be putting this on my GitHub as well once the last video of the series is up. And once that last video of the series is up, in that last video, I will have a link to that GitHub. I want to avoid putting it on the GitHub right away. This way it kind of encourages you guys, again, to write this code and learn the methods on how to do it. Maybe add that skip certificate check parameter in your version. Maybe add some different little parameters that you guys might want. Maybe add a status parameter to the get Proxmox node to get all the online nodes, all the offline nodes. These are all little additions that you can easily do to a module to make them a little bit more useful. And that's why creating your own modules will always be a really handy tool because maybe someone made a module, but there's something really specific that you have that might really only be a few people that are using that use case where you're going to really need to make a module for it. Hopefully you guys liked this video. If you guys did, please hit that like button. Also, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Also, be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out next week. And I will see you guys on the next video.